Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you're enjoying lunch today, and I heard Wicked is tonight for those that signed up, so awesome. I'm definitely jealous. I hope it's a good one. I just thought maybe we'd invite a moment to arrive here in this space. I find this middle of the day mark can often be, right, you're thinking about what happened in the morning, you're already jumping into what's happening in the afternoon, but I'm going to invite you to arrive here in this moment. So for me, that's about noticing how my body is feeling, right? Like, am I holding tension in my shoulders that I could maybe release a little bit by dropping my shoulders down, noticing if I have to shift my neck a little bit, or just in general, kind of take stock of like where my energy is, right? To cue up some of our conversation from last month, right? What might I need in this moment so that I don't fall into an afternoon, right, malaise. And so here is where I think we could do a fun experiment. So if you're willing, you can either close your eyes or soften your gaze if that feels more comfortable, right? But I'm going to ask you to cue up someone in your life that has had a pretty positive, maybe even profound effect on you, right? So think about a mentor, a coach, a former teacher, maybe a parent, someone who pushed you to a really high standard, but also supported you along the way. Notice who surfaces for you. And as you bring this person to your awareness, what might be 3 words or descriptors you would use to describe them? Like, why them? What about them makes them feel so valuable? Everyone got their person and their words? All right, so we're going to do a mini opening circle with your table. So I want you to write down first your 3 words. Don't feel like you have to change them because somebody else also used them. And then I'm going to ask you to share those 3 words or those descriptors, however they come to you, right, with your table. And each table, I want you to note if there are any commonalities that come up, right? Any common phrases or words, right? And that's what we're going to share out with one another. So take some time, share out with your group your 3 words. Okay. Everyone get a chance to share. Raise your hand if your table still needs someone to take a turn. Okay. Does everyone at each table feel like you have a word that surface maybe as a commonality at your table? Yes? No? Okay. So I'm just curious. I'm going to write them down because this is like super interesting fodder to me. So here at this table, what's a commonality that surfaced for you all?
I think supportive.
Supportive? Awesome. It's all right. If it comes up a lot of times, that's a really interesting indicator. So how about this table? Patience. And what about the table in the back?
Caring.
Caring? And we'll do that same order. So how about this table?
We have a lot of caring and kind.
Caring and kind?
We had to.
All right, so we got 3 slashes here. How about that back table? Back middle.
Persistence and commonality.
Say it again.
Persistence.
Persistence, I like it. This table.
We are honest.
Honest. Any comment?
Available.
Available, okay. Write those down before I forget. What about the back table behind them? Last back table, yes. Okay, that's okay.
Yeah, one thing that we discussed though is that all of the qualities that we had are qualities that like we want to see for ourselves or like build on ourselves.
So maybe admirable, right? There's something about those qualities that are admirable. Okay? And last two tables, I believe. How about the middle row?
We had kind.
Kind,
We're patient.
patient. All right. So anything on this list that you're like, man, if somebody had this, they would not be my kind of person, right? I think we would all agree that this is the type of traits that we aspire to, right? To go back to the admirable qualities. So queuing up, similar to what I heard earlier, right? If these are the qualities that we appreciate in others, right? In fact, sometimes become the most paramount relationships that we have in our lives, what about that can we then espouse for ourselves, right? So what I heard a lot of with caring being our number one commonality, right? Who are the people in our lives that would be influenced if we became more caring, more listening, more attentive, right? Insert any of these into that dynamic, right? So think about 3 people in your life that would, or even just relationships. It's not just about what they would benefit from, but like how you would benefit if you were more present, more attentive, more caring, more patient, more persistent with that connection. And write them down on your sheet, right? This could be a project team that you're on here at Gateway. Could be a significant other, a sibling, a family member, certainly as we walk into the holiday season, right? How would your life, how would those relationships shift towards the better? I encourage you to get specific, right? Of course they would be better, but in what ways? I would better understand them. I would understand their motivations and what drives them. We would have the hard conversation that we need to have, right? We would be willing to be honest with one another. What about being caring and having active listening would enhance specifically those relationships? Does anyone want to share an insight that came to you? Yeah.
So I just graduated from undergrad in May, and so I'm living with my parents. I moved back home, and I definitely think being a better like active listener at home might make the living environment a lot more cohesive. Because for the past 4 years, I haven't lived at home,
Yep.
and now I'm back, and I tend to get a little frustrated with them sometimes, and I'm sure they do with me. So
Yeah.
just being more caring and active listening might help that.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that example. We transition in our lives, right? Our relationships evolve. And so in order to evolve in that relationship as well, we have to be able to sit and pause and see how we show up differently, right? Yeah, that's a great one. Anyone else? Daisy, yeah.
I guess being more available
Mm.
help for family life because all of my family, well, most of my family lives abroad.
Yep.
So like, I have a hard time keeping in touch.
Mm-hmm.
With it. So you can say that.
Yeah. Yeah, when we don't always have the proximity connection to folks, right? How we show up can feel like it has to be more intentional that way, right? It's not just being in physical connection with one another. We also have to be in emotional connection with each other, right? So that people know that we care and that we're here to support. I feel that one deeply. Any other examples you want to share? Yeah.
You know, one of the things I put was, random encounters in your day-to-day being maybe more patient with others, creating more positive interactions with strangers, even though, I was reading like list 3 areas, I know you said people.
Yeah.
I thought that was wonderful.
Absolutely, right? I mean, how much nicer our world would be if we were just kinder to each other, right? We were just a little more patient. We were just a little more understanding. So to me, that begs the question, then why aren't we doing it more often, right? If this is what we aspire to be and we see all the amazing direct benefits that we could have in our own relationships, but really with the world around us, then why aren't we doing it more often? What are some of the barriers? Stress, yeah, we're going to get into that one. What else? Being in a hurry, right? Time is the biggest barrier. I work in the wellness space on a campus that is pretty high achieving, and it is the single most data point that we have about people wanting to do something and then actually doing it, right? It's time. Time is always the thing that feels like it's that wall between where I am and where I want to be. And so that's, both a mindset. It's a time scarcity mindset. We feel like we don't have enough. We talked about this a lot last month, right? There's only a finite amount of it. And it is also very real. We are pulled in many directions. What else is a barrier?
Having to rewire the kind of wiring that your brain already has.
Yeah.
And trying to just kind of coax yourself into being, on my part, like less spicy. So just trying to like exhibit those behaviors and just have a mental click where it's, shift your mindset.
Yes. Yeah, there is so much packed in there that I think is such a gem of wisdom, right? It's about rewiring our neural networks so that we are not continuously creatures of habit that just do the things that we often do. But I also think it is about interjecting maybe some newer ways of engaging, right? That might feel a little unfamiliar and sometimes scary because it makes us more vulnerable, right? How many of us, when somebody shows up and they're really heated or really sad, do we not pause to just let that awkward uncomfortability sit between the people in that circle, right? We're so quick to want to help or fix or change something that we don't actually sit with stuff that can be, I think, some of the most incredible ways we get to know each other as humans. So thank you. That one, I'm going to have to continue to think about ways in which I show up on rotation that maybe I need to switch out, right? Or allow the record to skip. So lots of ways that we have barriers between how we can be more present. And stress was one of those examples that I heard that I think is really valuable, because when we are in our own heads, when we are in our own worlds, it makes it really difficult for us to kind of widen that circle to what do other people need of us, right? I'd love to share a little bit of the work of Dr. Jeremy Hunter. He's a lovely colleague and mentor of mine. He's the executive director of the Executive Mind Leadership Academy at the Claremont Colleges in California. And he takes what I think many of us know to be the stress response, right, and turns it into what I have found to be something really digestible that I can live into on a day-to-day basis. So what Dr. Hunter talks about is these ideas of 3 zones of resilience, right? Many of us love to be in this zone of flourishing. For some people, you might have heard this as the window of tolerance, right? It's where we see all the stimuli that's coming at us and around us, and we feel fairly equipped to manage all of that stimuli, right? It could be demands coming in, it could be different stressors, new environments, different tasks, etc. And we kind of show up with all of our resources. It doesn't mean that we are perfect at anything, but what I would say is we have this greater sense that we have the capability, the capacity, the energy to make do with whatever is coming our way. So I'd first like you to think about, what does that look like for me? When do I feel like I have a zone of flourishing, right? How does that show up? Because I think when we know this about ourselves, the subtle cues, we have a better understanding of where we are in the moment, right? So I know I'm in a zone of flourishing when I pause and ask for other people's opinions, right? I don't just barrel my way into fixing or changing or moving forward or stopping altogether. I really want to bring everyone to the table, right? I feel really collaborative when I'm in a zone of flourishing. I'm also quicker to ask for help, right? So when I do feel stuck, I'm like, oh, I know that I can call whomever, right? That person. I really believe in the consulting model. I feel like the more heads I can get around a problem, the better. So I'm really quick to know, like, well, who are my thought partners in this particular space that might able to help me see it from a different vantage point. So think about what that is for you, and maybe even write down some thoughts about that zone of flourishing. Think about a time where you've had a really busy week and you've shown up to that week in a way that you felt really proud about, right? What about that? What about your behaviors allowed you to do that? So that's our window of tolerance, right? Again, it doesn't mean that we don't have stressors. It doesn't mean that our inbox is down to 0, but it does mean that we feel fairly capable of managing what's in front of us, right? I would argue it's also a space where we can lean into learning in uncomfortable situations in a way that actually helps us change for the better, right? We know that learning doesn't happen when everything is super easy. We have to be in kind of that yellow zone, right? If we get too far into the red zone, we stop learning. And if we're too far in the green zone, we're not learning anything, right? So we have to be in a little bit of a yellow zone. But I do find that the best way to do that is by feeling like we are in a space that gives us the ability to kind of learn from our mistakes, lean into difficult problems, try a little harder when it doesn't come easily, right? This is a whole growth mindset that Carol Dweck and many others have studied for many years now. It's like 50 years running, right? Where we allow ourselves to kind of be in discomfort without being in a space of struggle. Naturally, humans can't be in this space 100% of the time. We are wired for suffering, right? Our nervous systems want to keep us safe. So we often then pivot to these zones of chaos or zones of rigidity. So let's start with the zone of chaos, because I find that this is the one that Dr. Hunter talks about a lot as the gas pedal being stuck on. So how many times in your world have you found yourself in a zone of chaos, right? Where it just feels like things are coming in so fast that it's really hard to not be in a state of a state of fight or flight, right? That's one side of our nervous system. So think about what that looks to you subtly, right? So I know I'm starting to move into a zone of chaos when I am starting to respond to emails and I'm not actually being fully thoughtful or kind or whole in my response, right? I'm just trying to get through them so that I can get on to the next task, right? I'm a little sharper and maybe less patient with the people around me. I'm very agitated, particularly with the people that I care about most because they're my safety net, right? So I snap a little faster. I walk a little faster, right? Like everything feels like we are in hyperdrive, right? So this is a state of hyperarousal. So notice what that looks like to you. What does your hyperarousal state look like? Does anyone have any examples? Yeah.
Anytime I drive in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, don't try to make that Pittsburgh left. I'm not giving it to you, right? Yeah, absolutely, right? Driving, especially when you hit tunnels or bridges around here, like, no, you're not getting in. No, you cannot escape this line that I've been waiting in traffic for all this time, right? So awesome example. Any other hyperarousals?
Holidays.
Holidays, yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting and somewhat ironic that these times that are meant to be restorative and relaxing can often throw us in the space of just, right, like we're sleeping less, we're moving more, right, in ways that aren't always as relaxing or restorative as we'd like. Yeah?
Watching the Steelers.
Yes. Yeah, my son went to Penn State this year, and man, Penn State has been it's been rough to watch, right? I had such opportunity and potential this year. Yeah, it's been tough. Anything else? I think about hyperarousal, especially when I try to go to bed at night and my head will not stop spinning, right? Like I just keep playing all the things that are on my to-do list or all the things I should have said or should have done or need to do, right? So that is a small but very powerful cue in my mind that, oh man, you keep going in this direction, you're going to get to a place that doesn't feel good, right? Like you're going to continue to have less sleep, and then you're going to be more irritable and more anxious, right? It's like this vicious cycle that we get ourselves into. So when you think about this, you can kind of think about it on a continuum. If you can hit it, if you can identify it before it gets to its extreme, you have far greater chance to pivot back to your zone of integration or your zone of flourishing, right? Or your window of tolerance, however you want to call it, right? I would say like your best self is better prepared when you know when you're subtly shifting to come back to, right, before it gets to the extreme. So if that is the gas pedal stuck on, I'm curious what you think about the zone of rigidity, because some of us jump right there, right? So instead of being in the fight or flight space, we go to the freeze or fawn space, meaning our brake pedal is stuck on. So what does that look like to you?
Binge watching Netflix.
Yeah, binge watching Netflix, right? Lots of sometimes disassociation, sometimes deflection, sometimes procrastination, right? All of the things that want to make us escape whatever that current situation we are trying to escape from. Anything else? Burnout, yeah. Yeah, we see this a lot. We talk about this last month, right? It's when our spiritual energy feels like an all-time low, right? Like we're no longer connected to the work in front of us. Sometimes even to the things that we enjoy, they no longer have the same appeal. That's when I start to get a little bit more worried about someone, right? So again, if we're on a continuum, if you don't show up one day, totally fine. But if you don't show up for 3 days, right? If I don't see you in the places that I know actually fill your cup, then I start to get to worry that you're in more of that extreme space of rigidity, right? And then I worry about maybe depression, maybe, right, hopelessness, maybe loneliness. And that's where my empathy for people who are exhibiting those behaviors have really increased, because I see it's not about me, it's not about the activity, it's about them having to have some willingness to kind of pull themselves out of that particular zone, right? When we're in burnout, we can't just fix it on our own, right? We need the environment to also shift to kind of get us back to a space that feels comfortable. So the more we can understand the subtle cues of rigidity states, the more we can understand, right? If that brake pedal is super stuck on, what's one way that I can relieve that just a bit, right? I often say the intervention I love to think about is like, what's one thing I can do? I might not be able to do all the things. That is not where my energy is. But can I take a shower? Can I go for a walk? Can I drink a glass of water, right? Can I call a friend? So what about that zone of rigidity can get me to a space where I'm in forward motion? I share this all not because I don't think you understand it. I know that you understand it. We live this all day long. But what I love about this framework is, for me, it has helped me better identify when I sit in spaces with others, what about that relationship and my personal well-being is influencing how I'm showing up in space, right? So if I know that I'm more hyper aroused, right? Like I'm on the agitated side of the house, then I know that I need to do something more calming to get me more present and more attentive to myself and to the people around me. And if I'm hypo-aroused, meaning I am so slow and feeling really down, then I need something energizing to bring me back into that conversation, right? It helps me cue up more of the antidote that I need to find myself, right, and connect with myself in the moment that feels most helpful. So I would invite you to think about your own antidotes. What are your interventions, right? And here's where I can offer you some guides, right? In order to get back to a dynamic state, I think one of the ways we can do that is continue to prioritize the activities, those energy gains that we have, those hobbies, those practices, those rituals, routines that fill our cup, right? Because if we have a foundation that we're starting with, we can come back to that foundation. It really goes back to this idea that we are creatures of habit. So if we already know that there are things that really help us, we have more greater permission, right? More familiarity to come back to, right? Those practices. I like to call these non-negotiables because they are a part of how I need to exist, right? I need them in my life. And so the minute they start falling away is the minute I have to boomerang back to them. So think about, what are those habits for you? And hopefully you've been spending some time thinking about this, because we just did a whole conversation on energy gains, right? You've queued up a little bit of your activities that do this. Maybe you've found some new ones. The second way that I like to think about this is simply asking the question, right? What is needed in this moment? Because what my brain is telling me that is needed in this moment isn't actually always what's needed in this moment, right? So if I can just pause and take stock of everything that I have around me and all the resources and all the different options, then maybe I can do a better job at deciding in that moment what feels most connected, right? It's so easy when we are in a state of hyperarousal to just dig in, right? It feels like that's what I just need to do. I just need to get it done. I need to get through it. I just need to do one more thing, push one more. But if we keep going in that direction, if we don't oscillate back, we can get to that end point of the continuum, right, when burnout begins. And so it's really helpful for me to remember, like, I am not a robot. I am not a machine. I am not going to answer this email at 9 p.m., right? I need to turn off. I need to give myself something else to allow my brain, my body, the chance to recover. I think part of understanding what I need in this moment is being aware of my resources, right? Who in this world can help me in this particular time and space? What resources do I have at my avail? Not only that live outside of me, that also live inside of me, right? So where have I been in this situation before? How do I summon some of that strength or that wisdom of that lesson that I learned, right? That I can queue up again in this moment to support myself. Sometimes it's just the pause, right? The pause in and of itself is the boundary that we need. So the next time that email comes in or that next request comes in from our project manager, right? And we're starting to feel like, ooh, this is getting to be a lot. Can we just simply pause before we respond to gather a little bit more of our wherewithal to then decide how we would like to pursue our response? Right? It goes to the Viktor Frankl quote. It's my favorite quote, and I'm a collector of quotes, which is, right, we have so much agency when we give ourselves space. But if we are just stimuli, response, right, we give away all of our power. So what space do you need to create in your life, especially as we head into this holiday season, right? When the requests start coming in, what are some ways that you can pause to decide, right? Like, does that social gathering actually feel helpful right now? Is that what I need, right? Or is it something else? I often say, right, to every response or demand that we have in that comes in, we can say yes, no, or negotiate. So what negotiations need to happen for you to feel like you can be in a dynamic state more often? I think we do this by really honoring our relationships, because if we go back to our original conversation, right, if we queue up the people that have meant the most to us, it is because they have been honest and persistent, right? They've been caring, right? I often say they do hard things in a human way. They have this ability to meet us where we're at and still honor, right? Allow us to feel valued in that time and space, but also kind of continue to push us in the right direction. So how do we turn that inward to ourselves? How do we give that to ourselves? And how do we deepen our relationships so that all of our relationships have that type of quality, right? Any other ways that you create a dynamic state for yourself? Things that are not on this board that you're like, man, I feel like this would be helpful to add. Yeah.
I feel like pets are.
Oh, so good. It is our most popular program at CMU in the wellness space is our pet therapy. And I think for that very reason, right? Because you cannot be anywhere else other than having fun with a dog, right? When you're in that space. Students really enjoy it. What about pets do you think offer us that quality?
I feel like I'm really mindful when I'm with my pets, whether I'm playing or just petting my cat. I feel like I'm in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's really helpful.
Yeah, they are presence accountability partners, right? How many of you have pets? Raise your hand. Yeah, so this is a popular choice. How many of them actually cue you up? You have been on your phone too much. Come over here, right? My dog actually will nudge me when I've been on my phone for more than 5 minutes. It's a lovely timer. Yeah.
I think last session when we were talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that doing chores for my pets, it almost come recharging for me.
Yeah.
I don't know, just feel taking care of them.
Absolutely.
It's not a chore for me. It's more when I'm feeding them, it's they're all over me. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually reading this article that pets pick a priority human because it actually helps them regulate their nervous system. So they pick the person they feel safest near, and it actually helps regulate their entire body, right? Comes into a better state of calm because they feel more protected, right? I would argue that our pets do the same thing to us. Our pets naturally regulate our nervous system in a way that very little else can, right? So when in doubt, right, be connected to an animal. It's a lovely way to, and notice what you need to shift about your nervous system to be in space, right, where animals naturally want to gravitate to you as well. All right, those are great examples. Any others before we move on? Yeah.
I feel also just if you're at a point of no return, just riding the wave and just ride it out. Cause then sometimes once you ride it out, your brain is so tired that it kind of just resets and falls. And then you're too tired to think about what stressed you out, and then you kind of just I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously it's not a good thing to do all the time, but if it happens, it's a really stressful thing. Just ride it out. And then once you get tired, then reset.
Absolutely. There's a lot of science behind the fact that our emotions really only last 90 seconds. What we do to that emotion by overthinking it, right? So we get into our heads about, oh, I'm feeling mad, and now I'm going to stay mad in my head, right? So we continue to prolong it. In a lot of different philosophies, they call that the second arrow, right? Which I love that idea of there's, a first arrow, which is whatever pain or suffering that the world inflicts, right? Because it will. But the second arrow is the one that we inflict on ourselves by continuing to repeat and rehash and recycle that first arrow, right? So when we stick with an emotion, allow it to really surface in the body, we can actually dispel it faster than if we try to, what we resist persists, I like to say. And so it is sometimes nice to just, if I'm overwhelmed, let me just put on my scuba gear and enjoy the view underwater, right? this isn't gonna last. It's gonna be this really week that is like heavy and hard, and I'm just gonna be in it and acknowledge it, and then I'm gonna get through it. So that can be a really lovely mechanism, right? We don't wanna stay underwater for too long, but I agree with you. Sometimes we just have to be underwater. Life will life, right? Okay, this particular framework is one that I have found to be the single most helpful source for me to recognize when maybe I need to pivot in my relationships because I am no longer in a space where I am meeting that person where they are at and they are in turn meeting me where I am at. So this is the social discipline window. It's from the International Institute of Restorative Practices, but there's a lot of 2x2 frameworks that are very similar to this. Maybe you've seen parenting style ones, there's mindset ones that again are similar and connected to the growth mindset. This one is about relationships, right? And the whole framework behind this is that people generally tend to be more productive, happier, more collaborative, and honest, more authentic in how they are and how they show up when they are in the with box with individuals, organizations, or communities, right? So to get a little specific, this means that we are in spaces where we have high expectations of each other and high levels of support, which I would argue is exactly what you talked about in the first practice, right? These are people, when you surface them again in your mind, are people who really pushed you to be your best self, i.e. they had high expectations of you, they valued what you could bring to the table, and they offered more support to get you, to help you arrive to that space, right? Let's talk about the other boxes, because maybe it'll make a little bit more sense, right? So when we have low expectations of someone and low support, we are essentially apathetic to that individual, right? Like we're just not giving them the time, the space, or the energy to offer anything, right? We've all been in these spaces, right? We've all walked into rooms where it just feels like we don't belong, right? Nobody likes that feeling. We've also been in spaces for really good reasons, right? We often cycle through these, so nobody is in one box all the time, but sometimes we are in the not box, right? Or the apathy box because we are simply tired. We have too much on our plates, right? So we forego any energy that we are offering to other individuals. But it's never a place we want to stay in for long, right? Nobody feels a sense of worth or connection when we are in the not box for large periods of time. When we're in the to box, we have really high expectations for the other, but we offer no support. And I imagine you can surface people in your life who are also in the to box, right? People who have, this is like the yell, blame, shame sort of individuals, right? Sometimes we've had supervisors in this space or coaches in this space, right? I just need to beat it into you. Like if I just set the bar high, this is the only place you get to arrive. And you just have to figure it out, right? You need to get there. It can help for a short period of time, but what it often does is it keeps people in that hyperarousal state, right? Because if you can think of people in your life that have been in the to box with you, it's like you're always walking on eggshells. Yes? Yeah. Again, doesn't feel great, right? I think if we could just help them insert a little bit of support in that space, they could actually bring it to some incredible places, right? I think a lot about coaches in this space, right? Sometimes coaches are just like, I'm just gonna yell, I'm just gonna berate, I'm just gonna keep getting on their case. I even see this with parents sometimes, right? It's the authoritative parent. I just need to set the expectations high so they realize what they can get to, right? But if we're not offering support in addition to that, I think we fall short for a number of reasons. And mostly because our nervous systems can't be in that space for too long. On the other side of the house is the for box, right? And we have lots of people in our lives. Maybe you are one of these people, right? This is where we offer really high support, but no expectations. So I have a lot of teachers in my life. I will be honest, I can sometimes be in the 4 box, right? Where I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to stress them out too much, right? So I'm just going to give them all the support, but I'm not going to hold them accountable to the things that I need. And what I'm left with, oftentimes as a supervisor, is disappointment, right? Like, here I offered them all the support, but they didn't rise to the occasion. And I had to turn that mirror back on myself to realize, like, did you actually give them the clarity or the transparency to see what you needed, right? Were you clear about the deadlines or the expectations that you had? Like, I can always bring it back to the ways in which we engage that I'm like, oh man, yes, I did offer a lot of support. No, I did not offer high expectations. And what it makes people feel like is maybe they don't have value, right? It helps them question, like, is this really worth my time and energy? I actually think it is a demotivator when we give people a ton of support, but not a ton of high expectations. So again, these 4 people, what I would often call the protectors, right? We want to protect people, keep them in a bubble. I think they could also be incredible individuals, but they have to ramp up their level of expectation. So notice where you will often sit in your relationships. Because again, I find that these frameworks are really helpful, not to criticize ourselves, but to gain some more awareness of, like, where am I at and what about my relationships maybe honor one of these boxes, right? And what about that could maybe be helped with a little more support or a little more accountability? Every relationship I have been in, anytime there's a snafu, I can always come back to this framework and think about, like, was I in the with box with them? Were they in the with box with me? So when we're in the with box, we offer each other space to both show up as our best selves, and when we don't, we hold each other accountable, right? So I think about this a lot in team projects, about setting expectations right from the beginning, getting really clear about what those expectations are. I often say it 3 times more than you think you need to, right? Nobody should be confused about what those deadlines are. Nobody should be confused about what you expect them to bring with them, right? How you want them to show up. And likewise, they should never doubt that you actually care deeply about them as a human and not just about the product that they are offering or the outcome that you are trying to arrive at. And so notice, right? What could that look like if your project teams were in the with box? So we can do this a multitude of ways, but I'm just going to add some ways that I like to be in the with box with people. And then we're going to spend the next 12, 13 minutes together kind of thinking about this in really applicable ways, right? So one way that I like to be in the with box is we do a lot of listening. Because what motivates me, what drives my energy could be very different than the person next to me. And if I don't know that, then I'm making assumptions about what they want from the connection, right? I love getting involved on campus. I think it's a really great way for me to get connected to my community. My team doesn't feel the same way, right? Isn't motivated by the same drivers. I have one team member who has a very young infant at home. And so staying late after work is not how they get excited about the work, right? They want to, like, immediately leave when 5 p.m. hits. And again, those are 2 people who care very deeply about their work. But if I just tried to motivate them the way I'm motivated, we would not show up in space together, right? So the first thing that I like to think about is asking them open-ended questions, right? Like, what excites you about this particular project? Like, what do you want to really have your hands in related to this work? How do you want to receive feedback, right? In what ways is that helpful? Do you want it in writing and then we follow up on it so you have some time to process it before we talk? Do you want us to talk and then you can come back with some reflections, right? Understanding a little bit about what they need can be a really lovely way to better honor having high expectations, but also wrapping it up with some support. I often think about this weight analogy, right? Like if I hear myself talking a lot, right, especially in a one-to-one conversation, I'm quick to just pause and be like, let's give them a chance to chat a little bit, right? And I can do that with a pause or uncomfortable silence, because some people need a lot of time to like sit and process first, which is totally fine. But I can also queue up questions through open-ended reflections, right? So not the yes, no, right? You good with this project? That's not the answer, right? Like, what about this project has you feeling perplexed? What about this project has you feeling excited, right? Two different questions that are way more open-ended than you good with this project? So helping people really begin to unlayer and unpack what their contributions can be. What other ways do you have to be in the with box with folks? I'm going to let this be a tabletop conversation. So let's spend 5 minutes talking to your teams about what does it look like to be in the with box with the people in your lives or the project teams that you're on. All right. I heard tidbits of great conversation, so I would love to pull that collective wisdom to this larger group. What are some things that you heard that you really liked, that you think would be helpful for others to hear? What are ways that you've seen, witnessed, or practiced, modeled being in the with box with folks?
So I'm talking with a friend, and he's having some issues, whatnot, or her, being inclusive. But no. So I ask them questions, and they don't respond. So what I'll do is like I'll fidget with my beard, or like pick up a pen and play with the pen, and create that intentional sort of pause without making it awkward, because then I'm doing something, and it lets them think and then continue their own thought and conversation without me sort of prompting it intentionally or making it awkward.
Yeah.
So like if I could be like, if I wore glasses, like cleaning the glasses or taking my hat off, readjusting my hat, doing something that's not sort of like obvious.
I love that. I'm going to borrow that one. That is really lovely. It's a lovely way to create pause without making it awkward for that other individual, right? You're not staring at them, like waiting for their response, right? That's beautiful. What other examples do you have? Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, on the other side of witnessing somebody that's in the with box, I feel like if your expectations are set high and you also have high support, you feel more driven to do a good job when you know that, like, you can turn to somebody, but you also are expected to do good. Whereas perhaps if you had low expectations for yourself or given low expectations but a lot of support, you might not be as driven to do as good of a job.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much motivation connected to being in the with box, right? And so much self-confidence that can be built by being in the with box, right? I know all of you are newer to Gateway, but I bet you can see leaders, project managers, right, in the group that showcase when they have made a mistake and then share that out with the group, right, as like a process-oriented learning experience, right? That is being in the with box. It is showing like I had the capacity to say like, this actually didn't work the way that I thought it was going to, and this is what I learned from the experience, right? That can be a really lovely way to invite other people to also process their mistakes, not as something that is wrong, but rather the iterative process that you need to meet success more often. Any other examples? I set a lot of meetings, especially when I'm new to folks, with some creating like team ground rules or expectations, right? So if you can share the expectations as a team, right, then you're more ready to then address or come back to those expectations when somebody fails to meet them, right? So some of the ones that we talk about a lot in the groups that I'm in is like take space, make space, right? So make sure that yes, you are contributing, but you're also creating space for others to contribute. Lessons leave, but stories stay. That's another really big one, right? Like you don't have to like tell the mistake and that individual person that like helped, but you can explain like, hey, I really learned something from this meeting that I was in, right? Without kind of outing the person who shared their particular mishap. What other expectations or ways to be in the with box? Do I see one, Katie? No ideas? So just keep this in mind, right? Notice when you can be that model to somebody else, right? I do this a lot with my now teenage son, right? Where I'm like, man, I said something the other day that I actually don't feel like came out right. And now that I've been thinking about it, this is how I would have framed that instead, right? It has helped him see that like, I do not have it all figured out. I will often say to him, like, this is my first time in this particular moment with you. And so I'm like learning as we go. And so the more I can say that to him, the more I think he can be honest with me when he feels like he needs to come back to something that maybe feels awkward or not exactly the way in which he wanted it to go. So we have lots of resources, right? I would ask you to use gratitude as a way to be in the with box with people, right? When we can really show up and remind them how much value they bring to the table, we are absolutely honoring, like, I can see that you have this in you, and I'm so grateful that you've brought that to us, right? It also helps us. We derive a ton of really great benefits from practicing gratitude as individuals. And one challenge that I would offer you over the course of the next month is to identify one person in your life that you would like to be in the with box more often. Right? One person that you think, if I just gave them more time, more open-ended questions, more space to listen and to really see what they need from me, and I ask that of them in return, what would our relationship look like? So that could be someone here at Gateway or maybe someone in your personal life, but just notice. Notice if some of these tools can be applied. With that, there's a summary on here. You have the slide decks in your binder, so you can always come back to it, right? Lots of resources if you'd like to dig in further, and I'm always happy to have a chat pre-post next month. I wish you between now and then a really lovely Thanksgiving and have a great holiday in general.